First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. That's all praises to the Most High God in the name of His only begotten Son, who the world inwardly called Jesus Christ. It's the brother Aliyah,
Brother Live.
from the angels of Yahweh. All right, we're gonna make a quick lesson on Thanksgiving and why you shouldn't be celebrating Thanksgiving according to the Bible. So first, let's go to Genesis 49 because this holiday stems back to the Gadites being overcome by a troop, right? And Jacob told Gad, right, that a troop will overcome him. And that's how we got this holiday today, right? And also the Reubenites was affected by this as well, right? So read that.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 49, and verse 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last.
Right? So a troop overcame Gad. That's how we got Thanksgiving today. Esau and his wicked customs, right? Let's go to Amos 5 and 20. Right. So actually, first, let me read this source. Right. So this is bu.edu. Right. It says, before you devour your Thanksgiving feast, learn the full story behind the meal and the holiday. Right. And holiday is actually a compound word with holy and day. So it's nothing holy about Thanksgiving. It's nothing holy about it, right? So jumping down, it says on Thursday, people across the United States will sit down to tables laden with food to celebrate Thanksgiving, a holiday that traces its origins back to 1621 with Puritan colonists in Plymouth, Mass, or that Plymouth. Plymouth, Mass, gathered for a feast to celebrate their first successful harvest and invited Wampanoag Native Americans to join them. Right, so it says most of what's known about the feast comes from an account by a pilgrim named Edward Wilson, who wrote that the event lasted 3 days and that the menu included fowl and venison. The pilgrims held a second feast 2 years later to give thanks for the end of a persistent drought, but it wasn't until more than 150 years later, in 1863, that President Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday, right? So Abraham Lincoln, the one who declared this day as a holiday. And you got Negroes always saying, well, Abraham Lincoln, he was cool. He freed the slaves. This is the same man that declared Thanksgiving a national holiday, right? So read Amos 5 and 20.
All right, come. This is the book of Amos, chapter 5 and verse 20. Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness and not light, even very dark and no brightness in it? I despise your feast days.
Right, so Yahweh Bashim outside, he hates and despises the feast days that Babylon the Great holds, right? He hates and despises all the feast days around the four corners of the earth, but this specifically is just all out disrespectfulness towards the Gadites, his chosen people, right? Is there more than that? Read on.
I despise your feast days. I will not smell in your solemn assemblies.
Smell in your solemn assemblies, right? Because on Thanksgiving, what's happening? Things are being cooked. You got the damn turkey. You got the ham. Madness, right? Native Americans wasn't even eating pig before Esau brought them over here. They was native to this part of the world, right? They was native, right?
They weren't native.
Yeah, they weren't native. So, read.
Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them.
So, let me fact check that. Right. Yeah, they were native. Right. Read on. Read that again.
Though ye though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them.
Right. So the Lord's not dealing with Thanksgiving. He's not accepting that. After or before everybody eat on Thanksgiving, they all hold hands, they start praying. The Lord's not dealing with that. You praying over some damn pork that he told you not to eat, right? Hey, let's go to Isaiah 66 and verse, what, 15. Hey, these people that's eating ham and all the other abominable things on Thanksgiving, they got judgment coming to them, right? And they don't repent. And they eating that when Yahweh comes back. All right, Isaiah 66.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 66 and verse 15. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens, behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh.
Read.
And the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord.
All right, so you eating that ham every Thanksgiving, you're going to be a victim of Isaiah the 66th chapter. You're going to be consumed together, But, this started with Esau. Go to Proverbs 30 and 31. We're told not to learn the ways of our oppressor, right? And Jake and Eve, they like to say that we reading out of a white man's Bible, but they celebrate all the white man's holidays. That don't make no sense. On Christmas, they take their kids to the mall to go sit in white Santa Claus lap, right? Just hypocritical. Proverbs 3 and 31.
All right, come on. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 3 and verse 31. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways.
All right, so we can't choose the ways of the so-called white man. Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving as a national holiday. Let me get Jeremiah 10, learn not to live with heathen. He declared this as a national holiday. This don't got nothing to do with you Israelites,
This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 10 and verse 2.
Just like Jake and Eve like to celebrate 4th of July. Where was we at? We was in the cornfields, around that time. Right? So read.
Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen,
right?
And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven.
Right. So we can't learn ways of the heathen. The Edomites, they started Thanksgiving. What the hell? Why are you celebrating the destruction? That's wicked. The destruction of the Gadites. I swear, I see Israelites celebrating this that know they're Israelites. They keep some of the commandments, but they still celebrate their birthday. I'll be seeing that all the time. Some of you Israelites just can't let certain things go. Right? Just let Thanksgiving go. You can eat on a different day. Right? You can prepare a meal on a different day. I had another precept of mine. What was it? Salaki. Right. Oh, numbers 35, 33. That's what I want. Because they polluted his land when they came and they shattered the Gadites' blood. That's what they did to get Thanksgiving. Right? Read that.
This is the book of Numbers, chapter 35 and verse 33. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it.
Right? So blood defileth the land. The Gadites' blood was spilled all over this American soil, right? And that's the only way, that's the only reason that Esau gets to celebrate Thanksgiving, because he had to do a lot of killing. Go to Habakkuk 2 and 16. He had to do a lot of killing to be able to have this holiday. It's sick, it's evil, and it's wicked, right? And another thing, Jake and Eve talking about something, they've been starving themselves for like 2 days. I know they probably playing, but talking about they ain't eat all day just to, just for Thanksgiving. Why don't you fast on a daily? Why don't you do it for God? But you would rather fast for the white man, for his meal. You got that?
2 and 12.
Right.
Come. This is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 and verse 12. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establisheth a city by iniquity.
Right. So America was established by iniquity. Right. They came over here, they killed the Gadites, right? And now you got Thanksgiving. Right. The Lord said, woe be unto them that do those type of things. Right. Back to my previous point, you Israelites are wise to do evil. You fasting so you can have more room in your stomach for Thanksgiving. That's all. Fast for the Lord. Go to Jeremiah 4:22. That y'all do everything for the white, but y'all want to say we reading a white man's book. It's crazy.
This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 4 and verse 22. For my people is foolish, they have not known me. They are sottish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil.
Right? See that? They're wise to do evil. Why are you fasting just so you can enjoy Thanksgiving more? Why don't you fast with God? Right? That Satan tempt you not. Right? Go to 1 Corinthians 7 and 5. Right? Why don't you fast for that? Well, instead you want to fast for the white man's holiday.
This is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 5. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency.
Right? So why don't y'all fast that Satan tempt you not? Why don't you fast for God, Yahweh Bashim outside? But no, you want to fast so you can enjoy the slaughter of the so-called Native Americans. Right? You want to enjoy that meal, that swine's flesh. Right? Go to Matthew 15 and 8. This is an ungodly custom being kept, right? Like Wisdom of Solomon 14 and 15. It's an ungodly custom on 14 and 16, right? Matthew 15 and 8.
This is the book of St. Matthew, chapter 15 and verse 8. The people draw nigh unto me with their mouth.
Right? That's a lot of you Israelites, a lot of you Jason East. Y'all supposed to be Christian. This is the New Testament too. Y'all claim to be Christians, but y'all don't do nothing the Bible tell you to do. Right? Y'all draw unto your house out with your mouth. Read.
And honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men.
Right? So that's the commandments of men, Thanksgiving. Right? And you got some people, they get mad if you don't eat their Thanksgiving meal. Right?
God.
We don't give a damn about it. You got a point.
And nobody wants to hear the excuses of, your family member cooks for Thanksgiving, and they really want you to come and eat some food.
Yeah.
You gotta grab them a plate. Nobody's trying to hear those excuses.
Right. I was peer pressured into getting a plate. Go to Exodus 23 and 2. Right? Don't put yourself in that position. You gotta tell them no. I was around, they peer pressured me into eating a plate. All right. Exodus 23:2.
Done. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 23, and verse 2. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil.
Right. So you can't follow a multitude to do evil. Say no to Thanksgiving. Somebody offer you a plate. More than likely, it's gonna have pork in it. Right? You think your family members is researching these foods? Right? I got monoglycerides in it or something like that.
Y'all gotta have integrity in these last days. Y'all can't just be peer pressured into doing wickedness.
Right. Let me get Sirach chapter 26.
Come on.
Right. Maybe that's what I want. Or read 25. Be content with a godly man. Roughly paraphrasing. That it. Salaki. Bear with me. Maybe give me Psalms 1 and 2 in the meantime, so I find this precept. All right, so you gotta gather with like-minded individuals. If you gather with people that celebrate Thanksgiving, more than likely you gonna grab a plate. All right, read that.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 1, and verse 2. But his delight is in the law of the Lord.
Start at verse 1.
Verse 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly.
Right? So Thanksgiving is the counsel of the ungodly. You know, we love our family members, but they doing ungodly things, right? They celebrating Thanksgiving. Right? We not dealing with that. You eating pork, you praying on pork. You know, the Lord's not hearing that prayer, right? And then you get mad at people for not eating your plate that you made, right? We're not dealing with that, right? It's more than that.
Nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful.
Right? So you can't sit around these people. You know, you can't be around them on this day. You know, they're gonna peer pressure you into doing something wicked, right? Eating swine's flesh or something. Right? And it's just a principle. It's not even about eating pork. Of course, you don't want to do that. But knowing what Thanksgiving is about, I'm not going to eat nothing on that day. Right? Sirach 37 and verse 12. Right?
This is the book of Sirach, chapter 37 and verse 12. But be continually with a godly man.
Right? So it's not godly to gather with your family, you know, gather with a multitude of you and celebrating the genocide of your brothers and sisters, the Gadites and the Reubenites, right? It's not godly to do that, right? Read. Imagine somebody did that to you, you know. You may not believe that we the Israelites and Hispanics and Native Americans are our brothers, but imagine if a close family member to you died, then you had a whole country celebrating that day, right? You would be mad as hell, you know. I read.
But be continually with a godly man, whom thou knowest to keep the commandments of the Lord, right? Whose mind is according to thy mind, and will sorrow with thee if thou shalt miscarry.
Right. So you gotta be around like-minded individuals, man. Don't go around a damn plate unless you know you can handle that for real. Right. I wouldn't even do it personally, but you know, some brothers, hey, they be getting peer pressure. Some sisters, you know, I'm not even putting myself in that position, to be honest, but give me Proverbs 28 and 9. And a lot of people, they gotta pray, like I keep saying, they gotta try to pray over that meal. But they walk past the middle of the Lord every day, the noise. This prayer is about to be an abomination. Why? Because you ignored the law, statutes, and commandments. You ignored the men of the Lord, and you got to eat pork, right? That's what you got to do. Now, I don't know if everybody eat pork on Thanksgiving. I'm pretty damn sure.
Right? Chances that they don't, pretty low. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 28 and verse 9. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be abomination.
Right. Right. So the Lord's not about to hear y'all filthy prayers on Thanksgiving. That's what they like to do. They like to pray over the food. You know, as long as you cook on a different day, right? As long as you eat a lot on a different day, why I gotta be on Thanksgiving? That's why I always tell people they don't buy no gifts all throughout the year, but soon as Christmas come up, they want to buy some damn gifts, right? But we reading the white man's book. You do everything the white man tell you to do. Right? You celebrate all his holidays, right? Until you start celebrating the white man's holidays, don't tell us we reading out of a white man's book, which you have no clue what you talking about, right? But you know, we probably gonna wrap it up right there. Say no to Thanksgiving. It's a wicked, evil holiday, right? It's not wholly about Thanksgiving, right? With that, we're going to give all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh by Hashem Hamashiach, Wamla Yahusai, Brother Aliyah,
Brother Lahab.
Kwan Yashwala, Shalom.
Shalom.